we're back like we never, ever left. He's D-Gun. I'm your guy, Tone. This shows the second. This is Sports Take. I'm here filling in for my guy, Rob Ellis. You know, D-Gun, ain't no party like a Sports Takes party. You know that, right?
That's right.
Ain't no party like it, and the party is never, ever complete unless we bring in our guy, the man that always brings the noise, the guy that always brings the trolls out of the woodworks, the guy that knows how to rile you up and just bring that energy out of you, the guy that knows how to make you
instigator.
Think, the guy that knows how to make you think. He makes you think in ways that you didn't want to think. You know who I'm talking about. Our guy from the National Football Show, Dan Big Sills, Sileo. How are you feeling, sir?
Oh, did I hear Gator? Wow, man. D-Gun knows how to step on that damn button there, man. Holy cow, man. I don't even mention that school. It's the school on 75, Highway 75. And the only thing that I love about Gainesville is the alligator farm. That's it. I don't really like anything else.
No. I didn't say the gator. I said he's an instigator.
Oh, instigator.
Yes, I said he's an instigator, not a gator.
D-Gun, I resemble those remarks.
Oh, man. Well, first and foremost, Big Sills, you know, I appreciate you taking the time out to
of course, anytime for you guys, man.
On short order, especially, man. Let's get right into it. The Eagles, they're entering their third off season under Nick Sirianni. Is it second or the third? I think it's the third. And
the third.
He's entering his third season as the head coach. There's a lot of expectations riding on this Philadelphia Eagles team. We know how last season ended. They made it to the Super Bowl. You predicted it, by the way. They made it to the Super Bowl. Unfortunately, they came 3 points shy of securing the second Super Bowl in Philadelphia Eagles history. As it stands right now, what do you think is going to be the tallest hill for this 2023 Eagles team to climb this season?
It's the depth. It's the experience. I mean, look, I agree with D-Gun. I heard him say it. The retooling of the team with higher ceilings. Could Jalen Carter be a higher ceiling than Javon Hargrave? Yes. However, again, he's never played an NFL snap. So we still have to get the experience factor. The secondary, lot of ifs and buts and whats and maybes and this and that. We have to wait and see how they're going to play. I was very encouraged by the communication skills that they had in that game against the Ravens, going back and forth. And I got to think that's a little of Matt Patricia and his influence factor, because that was his forte in New England. Again, D-Gun has brought this up numerous times. They lost their top 5 tacklers, and anytime you lose your top 5 tacklers like that, that's a ton of experience. I mean, 160 tackles from TJ Edwards, which I think was the biggest blunder in the offseason, not bringing him back, because I would have loved to have seen TJ Edwards and Nakobe Dean do what they did with Seth Joyner, matriculate him in, start him at the Willer Sam, bring him in, let him get his feet wet, let him learn how to play in a structured system. But I think it's really experience, and the offense is going to have a lot of weight on it. They're going to have to carry this team. And if they have 3 and outs, you're going to be playing on a lot of short fields early on in the season. If you look at it, do they have the best roster again? Probably the front 22 with the quarterback separates them from San Francisco. San Francisco's got a lot of stars on that team, but they're a headless horseman. So you still look at them, but I just don't think they're as deep. If they lose D-Gun, if they lose Devontae, or they lose one of those corners, we're talking about maybes. And anytime you go into a season with maybes, you're really kind of flipping a coin there.
Big Seals, Tone brought this up earlier in the show, and I want to pose this question to you. And I want to preface it by saying this, and I've said this time and time again after doing a lot of research. The last time an NFC losing team in a Super Bowl has gotten back to the Super Bowl, you have to go all the way back to 74-75 with the Vikings, okay? Repeating to get to a Super Bowl, period, it's 17%. So Tone had posed the question, how much pressure is on Howie Roseman to duplicate what he did, which is basically unheard of in today's brand of football because of the parity across the board. Now, unlike most teams, Howie can see in the future. He doesn't build just for today. He builds for down the road, as well as stacking his team that they have enough veteran presence to hold it on lockdown, when things are going bad. But you've got the toughest schedule in the NFL this year to go along with your aspirations of getting back to the Super Bowl. Is there more pressure on Howie or less because he's also implementing 7 new players on defense?
I think you've got to take advantage of the landscape of the NFC right now. And you got to remember something about that Vikings team. And D-Gun, you and I are, old enough to remember that. Back then, you had stacked Vikings and Cowboys and Washington teams and really good teams, and you couldn't move around like you could back in the day. And that NFC was packed. This NFC is top-heavy. So he's got to take full advantage, in my opinion, of the NFC right now. I think there's more pressure on Howie Roseman than any coach that will ever be the head football coach in Philadelphia because they've replaced those guys. Look, it's pretty remarkable to think that ever since the owner took over from Norman Brayman, that almost every single coach that he has a winning record, and that includes Chip Kelly. There's even remnants left of Kelly with Jeff Stoutland still in the building. He brought him in and Lane and drafted him. So, there's been successes. Pressure on Howie, the pressure, again, is kind of lifted off him because of one thing. The Philadelphia Eagles do one thing that no other team in the NFL does. It's the best paying organization in the NFL, and it's the best smart paying organization in the NFL. What do I mean by that? Howie's latitude and the reason he's able to rebuild is because they give the money up front. They don't give the money on the back end where you're going to be salary cap purgatory like the Dallas Cowboys are every year. They're going to go to Lane and go, here's $30 million in 2 years. We're going to lower your cap hit so that we can bring more talent to the team. The true secret sauce in Philly is that the owner is willing to give the bag of money. So how he's able to go out and gamble a little bit more. And I said this the other day too. Just to show you, D-Gun, about the pressure you're talking about, there is no question, in my opinion, the reason Jalen Carter is on this football team is because of the flub up of Justin Jefferson. There were question marks on him because of him taking money from Odell Beckham on the sidelines. There was a little character issue on some of the things that were said with him at LSU. They weren't going to be in that position again. They were going to blow that into the wind. And in my opinion, Jalen Carter's on that team because of the mistake that they made with Justin Jefferson and taking the safe pick and Jalen Reagor. So to me, I think he's got so much latitude as a general manager, maybe more so than anybody in the NFL. Is he Veach in Kansas City? I think Andy and him work very well. I like Schneider in Seattle. I do like Mickey Loomis down in New Orleans. But I got to say, man, there's no question, and especially the last 4 years, D-Gun, the drafting has picked up so much better.
Yep.
Where you had, what was it? Only A.J. Brown was the only non-drafted Eagle in the offensive huddle in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
That's 17 of 22 guys were drafted by the Eagles. Their drafting has completely turned around over the last 4 years. So he puts the pressure on him by really controlling a lot of the environment, the personnel, the coaches, all the stuff that goes through him. And the owner is really the guy, in my opinion, that allows him that latitude.
You bring up a good point, Big Sills. A lot of that pressure that Howie carries is kind of self-imposed. He kind of wears a lot of hats in his organization. He picks the roster. He picks the pool of coaches that his coaches can choose from. He has a lot of hands. He has his fingers.
And Sirianni, though,
all over the place.
Sirianni, though, Tone, is building equity up where his decision making and his influence now is becoming more and more. See, Doug wanted to punch you in the head with his influence. And when he started dipping his beak into Howie's personnel sandbox, that was the beginning of the end for him. When he started doing that, Frank kind of schooled Sirianni and telling him, hey, get along, go along, they'll bring you along. And that's kind of how Nick has become more of an influence in the locker room than what Doug, because Doug became very combative at the end. And Doug wanted say in the personnel, this is how he's game, man. Either you go along to get along or you're out.
Let me squeeze this in really quickly, D-Gun. We talked about the pressure that's on Howie, right? I want to take it a step further. He has improved as a drafter, right? But, there's a lot of pressure on him, when it comes to this defensive tackle position specifically. We always talk about the pressure that's on the player, right, to live up to expectations. But not often do we put the pressure on the GM to really make sure that position stays as fertile or as dominant as possible. Remember, the Philadelphia Eagles, they've been a team that's been pretty strong at the D tackle position since Fletcher Cox has been here, right? Fletcher Cox was drafted in 2012, and when he was drafted, he was asked immediately to be the guy. When he came in, he was playing next to guys like Mike Patterson, Antonio Dixon, Derek Landry, Cedric Thornton, he Cullen Jenkins. He came in and he was asked to be the guy immediately. Whereas though a guy like Jordan Davis, when he was drafted, he was playing behind Fletcher Cox, playing behind Javon Hargrave. So based off of that situation, he wasn't necessarily asked to be the guy, yet he was drafted extremely high. Jalen Carter, a guy drafted extremely high. And we know Fletcher Cox is on the way out. This may be his last year. So speaking of the pressure, how much pressure is on Howie Roseman to have gotten these two picks in particular right? Because remember, 2 back-to-back years, you drafted 2 DTs in the top 15. That's telling me something, Sills.
It is, but remember something. The one thing that they've done different from the Brandman days, they believe in the lines, both sides.
Absolutely.
That 17 Super Bowl, they beat up the Patriots. They beat them up with those fronts. It was the best combination of defense and offensive line play that I've seen in a long time. I mean, they were like the Cowboy teams back in the Jimmy Johnson days where they dominated you up front. Yeah. The defensive tackle position, I said this about – I think people think that I'm really all over Jordan Davis. No, I think he's a good ball player. I think he's down in the 20s. I think he's going to be a player like Vince Wilfork. He could be like that. Vince had 16 sacks in 13 years. However, he was part of 3 Super Bowl teams. That's right. I mean, he's going to knock on the door on being a Hall of Fame guy. Now, that all being said, though, if people thought he was going to come in here, and I never thought he was productive at Georgia. He had 9 sacks in 43 games at Georgia. He was never going to come in here and be a whirlwind 3 technique. He was going to come in here, and because everyone fell in love with the 4.78 at the combines and his shuttle drills and all that, no one ever said he wasn't a great athlete. However, his production, he's not a productive guy.
So that was the problem.
It's just his production, right?
People had the wrong perception of what he was when
he's going to do. He's going to be able to clear up space for Carter to have 13 sacks, or for another guy to have Milton Williams to have numbers. Because at the end of the day, his influence is going to be on first and second down, which influences third down if you're third and long. Yep. So to me, again, people thought he was going to have these gigantic numbers. He was never going to be that guy.
Sills, I've said it time and time again. I just don't think Jordan Davis is the body type that is the 3-down player. I think his role will be defined for his entire NFL career. He's going to be a situational player, whether it's a 2-gap, type player, or, just a definitive role player. And there's nothing wrong with that. Vince
Wilfork was only a 2-down player.
That's right, his whole career. And look at the career he had.
Absolutely.
And I understand, a lot of times from a fan perspective, when you hear certain names, because they're all these glamorous names that come out of college, we have these expectations of them. But yet when you transition to the NFL, those guys get paid 7 figures because they identify a certain trait that they feel that fits best for what they want to do in an overall scheme. Jalen Carter, I do believe, will be that 3-down type player. If he can stay healthy, I believe that Jalen Carter can be a dominant entity. I'm not going to say he's going to be the next coming of Aaron Donald, because that's a lofty goal that in a lot of cases is just unattainable, because you've never seen a smallest D tackle like an Aaron Donald dominate the way he does. but Jalen Carter has the physical makeup to become a very successful D tackle in the National Football League. Do you think at this point, for all the accolades that we keep hearing about Jalen Carter, and of course we all saw him make the one definitive swim move and put pressure on the quarterback, do you think the expectations right now as we sit here, because you played in the trenches, are we accelerating the expectations too much? Should we pump the brakes a little bit and give this young man room to gradually grow into what we expect him to be?
You see what this is?
Yeah.
That's Jerome Brown.
Yep.
I think this kid has the potential to be that kind of player.
Woo!
Like that. And I'll tell you why. What's going to happen to him is he's just got to get used to seeing what the difference between the college game and the pro game is that in college, I'm a 550-pound bencher and I run 4.8s. I'm going to kill 90% of the guys in front of me.
Yep.
When you're in the NFL, you're not killing Jason Kelsey.
Everybody's
You're
strong.
not killing Landon Dickerson.
Yeah.
They're bigger. They're stronger. And what the fundamental thing they do is they beat you on technique, splits, slip and scoop, flat steps, technically sound. I played against Bruce Matthews once. This guy's doing head fakes on me that I have never seen in my entire life. Flat steps, getting up, slipping and scooping. The plays come just like this. And all of a sudden you look up, you got 5 minuses. You're like, holy shit, what the hell's going on here? You're going like, I got 5 minuses in a matter of 10 seconds. And you're going like, these guys are so technically sound. But what I love about him is the explosiveness, the way he moves, his hands, how strong he is. He's got that big hip strength too in the middle in there. D-Gun, he's a 3 technique, in my opinion, like a young Ndamukong Suh kind of guy. When Suh was in Detroit, that first few years when he was dominating like that, I think he could be something like that. To me, I think he's the best player in the draft. And you get him moving around like that, and if Jordan Davis can play the way he can play, just hold it down. You're going to free up, and there's going to be a pretty good rotation in there. And I'll make this point to you guys. You know, everyone's always like, Sills is killing the Kobe Dean. Remember something. Wyatt in Green Bay, Walker in Jacksonville, Davis and Carter in Philadelphia. It's not that Nakobe can't play. He's a good player. Those guys protected him, though, his health. When you had those gigantic guys in front of him like that, and you have those type of skilled players like that, if you get knocked off the ball, Nakobe Dean's in problems, okay? He had superstar ball players in front of him, huge human beings. And, again, these guys all have to come together and all gel. Can you imagine you have maybe for the next 10 years, you have a 3 and a 1 technique that could hold down the fort like you had with Reggie and with Jerome for the brief time that they had, but you could maybe do this a little longer than what, of course, happened with Jerome. But, I mean, you got the makings of something here that's great. My problem, though, is that I hear the Philly media going, this guy, Davis, is now they're going to start saying he's a bust because if he has 28 tackles, 4 sacks, they're going to look at that and go, well, he sucks. I'm going to go, no. What was the ranking on the defense against the run? Well, they were 7th. Shit, that's a win.
So you think a guy like Jordan Davis, to really understand his game, Jordan Davis's game is more so meant for the football nerds.
Look beyond the
right?
numbers.
You know what I mean? Like his production is more so meant for the football nerds. In order for you to really understand his
beyond
impact,
the numbers.
It's not tackles. It's not tackles for loss. It's not sacks. It's how it's the lanes he's creating for a guy like Nakobe Dean. And you mentioned it, right? Nakobe Dean, we talk about this all the time, Big Sills. There's a lot of pressure being put on this dude. He only played 34 snaps. And look, Eagles fans, this is not
unneeded pressure too.
This is not me trying to say he won't be capable of doing the job. This
unneeded pressure.
Absolutely unneeded pressure, because this is a situation where he's not playing next to anyone that has experience in this offense.
Think about this, Tone. Think about what you're asking this young kid to do with 34 snaps last year. Let's just hypothetically take the ability out of the building, D-Gun. Let's not even talk about that. Continuity, recognition, communication, all those things that he's not have done yet. He's not even done it because he's missed so much time.
And a new coordinator.
And on top of that, I think Sean Desai was the third pick on coordinator. I think the whole Fangio thing got blown up because of that Gannon mess. And I also think that they wanted the Georgia Bulldog defensive coordinator because he was the second interview. And to me, they landed on Desai. And guess what? That's why they brought Patricia in, because you know why? They liked Sean Desai. He's got a great reputation. Carroll vouched for him. But at the end of the day, D-Gun, they're still in the back of their mind going, yeah, you know, he had some success in Chicago a little bit here, but, you know, I mean,
so they're hedging their bet with Patricia.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Because of the limited experience Desai has as a DC. And when you've had the type of defense that had the measure of success that this defense had, unprecedented success in 2022, whoever the D coordinator who came in here is put under unfair pressure and criticism and comparison because of what they did in 22. But you lost 7 components to what you achieved last year. And implementing, people think it's just going to be a natural transition. You're going to drop and play anybody you want into this scheme, and it's going to be just as successful as it was a season ago. No, it's not. No, it's not. Now, it might be, but the numbers show us historically that doesn't happen. That just does not happen.
T-Gun, if that team wins 11 ball games this year with that schedule, it'll be a better football team than a year ago with the 14 wins, because you're playing against top-flight coaches, top-flight quarterbacks, and sometimes, you know this as well, this isn't about how many wins. This is about getting home field, and this is about winning your division.
Yes.
I don't care what that number is in the NFC. As long as they win the East, get home field, that could be 11-6. And 11-6 against that schedule, that means you've beaten a Bills team, or you may have beaten a Chiefs team, or you may have swept the Cowboys. In my opinion, there's no that team is going to be – we're going to find out a lot about that football team, and I don't think that defense will be ready to pick the apples off the tree until probably week 7. That offense is going to have to carry the mail.
Yep.
I'm telling you, D-Gun, for the first 2 months of that season.
You know what, Big Sales? If and I agree with what you said. If this team wins 11 games but win the division, I think home field advantage could be in jeopardy, only because the other teams that we're comparing them to have lesser schedules,
right?
And somewhat of an easier road. So they might have to go to a Minnesota or
New Orleans.
Or New Orleans. And I've been talking up New Orleans. They may have to go to Detroit. Only based on the fact that
that's right. Those divisions are so
yeah.
weak. I mean, look at who New Orleans plays. They play nobody.
Yeah.
I mean, Atlanta, I agree with you, D-Gun. I've heard you talk about it.
Yeah.
Atlanta, you know, I kind of watched it, Desmond Ridder, a little bit. You know, he does show that he can see the
he's still unknown to me, though. He's still a big
but,
unknown to me.
And again, to me, I watch that New Orleans team. Boy, I'll tell you what, man, they're a good-looking football team. They're going to – and when they get Kamara back, and if they get Kareem Hunt signed down there, and you put those two guys in the backfield with Olavier and with Michael Thomas, who's looking good in camp.
Michael Thomas is all the way back, that is huge.
And their defense,
yes.
I mean, they got a good group. And Dennis Allen, in my opinion, could be the only question mark in New Orleans. I think they're a sleeper to maybe even win home field. But again, the Eagles look, they got the toughest schedule. They got the target on their back. This football team, again, last year, there were so many mediocre football teams they played, and I mean by the quarterback position. However, they still got in the ring and knocked the guys out, which is not anything on them. They beat them up, what they were supposed to do.
Right.
But to me, I think, D-Gun, this team, Tone, this team is going to be more prepared this year to go into Arrowhead because of the teams that they're going to play. And when you get into games like that, you're going to be battle tested instead of taking on Davis Mills and stuff like that. You're going to have gone through Josh Allen, Dak, all these other quarterbacks that you're going to have to play, Aaron Rodgers. When you get to Arrowhead, you're going to be more prepared. Personally, I think that's why the AFC, and I said this a lot, I think the AFC is going to be tougher to win this year than the Super Bowl.
I agree.
Yes. So let me ask you this. Final question from me, Big Sales. Once again, I appreciate you for taking the time, my man. You know, you were tremendous today. So I know we spent a lot of time on the defensive side, and I think that's pretty much where the storylines lie for this Eagles team this year. I feel like the offense is pretty much what it is. The defense is
if Swift plays like I think he might, I don't know how you defend that offense.
Right. So really quickly, we spoke about this defense, and we spoke about the various variables that can lead to their demise, but that can also lead to their success, right? Knowing what we know about this offense, what's the best case scenario for this defense? Is it, and what I mean by that is, knowing what we know, is it best to just hope for this defense to be able to get timely stops? Are we hoping for a better run defense, a better communication on the back end with the DBs? What's the best case scenario for this defense so this team can get back to a Super Bowl?
Well, here's their identity. Don't give up plus 25. What I mean by that is don't give up plus 25 plays. Don't get beat deep. Keep everything underneath and hope the other team makes mistakes. That was the philosophy of last year. And again, those two corners we have, they're not press man corners.
No.
Center fielders. They keep everything underneath. You see, and Darius Slay, he bitches about, what happened with him in Detroit. Well, what happened with him in Detroit, Patricia likes man cover corners. They've always had those in New England. He's not a man cover corner. He is a center fielder, and they did a great job. Bradbury, to me, I'd take him over Diggs in Dallas because he's more consistent of a ball player instead of giving up big plays. So to me, the problem that you have this year than compared to a year ago, Tone, is every time that this football team has taken on a big-time quarterback, whether it's Dak had his worst year of his career, right? He still threw 5 touchdowns versus that number 2 ranked defense last year. And if you allow, with those linebackers we have on this team, to allow players like Kelsey and some of these other guys with those quarterbacks to threaten the zone and to threaten the safety position, I mean, when's the last time they stopped a big-time quarterback? Aaron Rodgers.
So how do they do it? Sales, what can they hope for? How do they with this roster? How do they deal with these?
You got to get pressure. You got to get home. You got to get home. Okay, those corners have to kind of duplicate again what they did a year ago, but they got to get home. Okay, there's more pressure this year on the D line and on the edge rushers and guys like Reddick than there is on the guys on the perimeter at the cornerback position, because you're taking on. You don't want to get. Hey. I'd rather give up, and this is Bradbury's philosophy, and I love it. Bradbury's never going to get beat deep. He'll give up the 10-yard in or wheel route, but he ain't giving up the plus 25, okay? Now, Slay will, and I thought Slay did not play very well the last 2 quarters of the season, and I didn't think he had a very good Super Bowl. So we'll see if that 32-year-old thing's starting to jump on him a little bit here, but again, there's more pressure on that D-line to get home.
Big Sills, I look at the Eagles secondary, and we talked about the limitations and the question marks about the depth. And again, it's just a one-game limited sample. But I'm looking at the eagerness and the athleticism of the Justin Evans, the Eli Ricks, the Sidney Browns. And I think the secondary might be a little deeper than we give it credit for being.
I was with you. I heard you the other day, and I'm like, yeah, and you know what else you saw? You saw the communicating. They were talking and they were looking and they were moving guys around, which meant that self-coaching, which to me, I was like, wow, that's really good what these guys with limited experience are doing. Now, look, Baltimore's not going to show you anything, nor are the Eagles, because in New England, they're going to dissect everything that these preseason games are going to do. And Belichick is watching every single thing you do, and you don't want to telegraph anything that you're doing there. But they were talking. And I'll tell you this too, got to figure a way in maybe blitz packages or in tight end covers or spies. You got to get that kid Sidney Brown on the field, because he reminds me a little bit of a bigger version of Bob Sanders. He runs through tackles, not 2 tackles. He runs through them, and you can see why you fall in love with him when you watch him on film a little bit. He's a hitter. I mean, now he's going to get beat on some false steps because he's a younger player. But, boy, I'll tell you something. When you watch him run to the ball, you're like, yeah, there's something to this. And the kid Ricks, what he's done is this. D-Gun, today you have no chance to make a roster because of limited practice time and the limited practices you have.
Exactly.
But when you stand out like that in a game, the coaches then do this. Oh, so now you're on the radar. So now you're put yourself on the radar. So now let's see what he does against Cleveland. Maybe a little bit more, move him around, see what he does. This is not about flash plays. This is about consistency plays. Does a guy continue to do this week in and week out? Jimmy Johnson used to tell us all the time, it's not about the sensational plays. It's about the bad plays you make. Nobody wants to be that guy that gives up the game-winning touchdown. Go out, be consistent, do your job. And that's what Belichick always means by it. Do your job. It's not about having a pick six for a touchdown or leading the NFL in interceptions. Personally, after watching CJ and after watching him on film more, I'll tell you what, man, I think that was a fluke year. I think he's a really good player, but I think he's a fluke. I mean, there were so many times that those run fits weren't good. There were so many times he was out of position, and I was wrong. You know, I jumped on a guy at the Inquirer about CJ. I think maybe I was wrong about him because at the end of the day, you go back and watch those game films, man, I mean, there were I think 35% of the time he was in the wrong gap or he was like getting turned around out there. And I watched it more and I said, man, maybe this guy, Jeff McClain was right. This guy here is undisciplined out there on the field. And I watched it again last night, D-Gun.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think those 6 picks, sometimes you get into a right position and you get a little lucky. I think he was part of a process last year on a good football team. So I don't know, man. I've changed my opinion on maybe the kid from Pittsburgh is going to be an upgrade because he knows the position.
Well, one thing I do know, Big Sills ain't no fluke. I'll tell you that right now. Big Sills always, Big Sills is as consistent.
Hey, man, the only thing I
man.
give a crap about today is, man, I got to get D-Gun's rib. I got to learn how to do ribs, man. My wife won't let me on the grill. I can't, man. I almost burned my house down 4 or 5 times. I had a Traeger. Almost killed ourselves with the Traeger, man.
Oh, geez.
It was. Hey, get this, D-Gun. So I take the sawdust pellets out and I put it in a box, right? I didn't think anything of it. So I'm like, all of a sudden I look out the window and I go, wow, something's on fire. You know, the forest fires out in California. I'm like, wow, man, there's a fire out here. Sure enough, I go out, my canopy's completely fired. I had 3 plastic barrels, industrial barrels, burned to the ground. And the only thing that saved my life was that the Traeger was against the fireplace with the fire chimney. And I'm like, my wife comes in, she goes, you almost killed us. And I'm going like, well, you're barred. So I can't, I've been barred from cooking.
Who told you to put hot ashes in a wood box? Who told you this?
D-Gun, you know, I know a lot of things, but there's a lot of things I don't know.
Oh man. Well, look, Sills, how about this? We know we can't count on you to cook on the grill.
Hell no.
But listen, what you got cooking up for us later on the National Football Show, man? I don't know if you want to give up the trade secrets.
Dave Wannstedt's going to join us. We're going to talk to him a little bit about defense and identifying. You got to remember something about Wannstedt. He was the guy responsible for bringing in Cortez Kennedy. He was a guy with Russell Maryland, and he also recruited Aaron Donald to Pitt. And so I'm going to ask him about identifying defensive tackles. And I played for him too, and Jerome played for him, obviously. So we're going to talk to him a little bit about what he saw. And like Derek, what makes Aaron Donald so insane? He's 6 feet.
Yes.
270.
Yes. And you can't.
I mean, D-Gun, I can't think of an NFL D tackle in history that size that has been that dominant.
No.
Right?
Not Warren Sapp.
No. Sapp's 6'2.5", 315 pounds. I mean, I can't think of one guy that is, I mean, maybe on the perimeter, Dwight Freeney was a 5'11", 6-foot guy. But, I mean, that's outside. This guy's inside at 270.
In traffic, yeah.
And last year was the first year he got banged up. I cannot believe how good he is inside like that. His hand quickness and his feet must be so insane inside for him to be able to get away from that. Now, I'll tell you what he does do, Derek, that's different than back in the day. He doesn't play to run. And he runs around a lot of blocks because if you look at the Rams' run defense, since he's been there, I mean, they give up about 5 yards of play. But in today's NFL, most of the time, 72% of the time, you're a nickel package.
Not only that, but you think most teams in the NFL over 65% of the time are throwing the ball.
Yep.
And that plays right to his strength. And when you notice, he has one of the quickest get-offs the snap I've ever seen.
Ever.
And when he attacks, you notice a lot of times he doesn't attack straight on.
Yep.
He angles his body so where he can slide. And even when guys are trying to double team him, when he angles his body, he's so much smaller, he gets up under a lot of these bigger guys. And with his lower body leverage, I tell you what, he has utilized every asset that God has given him physically to the nth degree, like nobody else I've seen in a long time.
He's a Pennsylvania heavyweight wrestling champion too.
Yes. Yes.
So that he knows leverage and he knows how to use his hands. And to me, that was one of the things that helped me out a lot was being with a wrestling background, is being able to use that leverage in your hands and angles. And he understands them really well. And guys who have had that kind of, being able to get hands off and slip and, use technique and such. I always thought that was really a great asset for him because he was a Pennsylvania heavyweight champion wrestler. So
that's right.
Well, guess what? If you guys see Big Sills in the woods wrestling a bear, help the bear, okay? I tell you that right now. Big Sills.
Tone, man, I can't jump over. Hey, Tone, I can't jump over a stack of pennies right now, so it's all good.
or if you see him with a big lighter, just make sure there's not a grill within 20,000 miles of it.
You see me with a lighter, you better run.
Oh man, Big Sills, man. Listen, you were magical today, my man. I appreciate you. I love you, man.
Bet, man.
You're always the truth. And we appreciate your time, man. Make sure you guys lock in on the National Football Show today at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, 2 p.m. Central Time, my time. But make sure you guys lock in on the National Football Show with Dan Sileo. Always does amazing work for JAKIB Sports and always pushes your buttons, but also always pushes the right buttons at that. And that's what I love about Dan Sileo.
Hey, D-Gun, real quick before I go. He'll go like this. He'll go, man, I can't stand this. Dude, I love you. Dan, I love this guy. I can't stand this home big. Man, I love this. Wait, damn. Drag me back into this.
Man.
Thing, man. Pull me back in again.
Hey, Sills, what do you always say? Sills, what do you always say? Now you can't leave.
Now you can't leave.
All right, Big Sills. We appreciate you, man. Take care, big dog.
You good, dog? All right.
Oh man, I love Big Sills. That was fun. Hey, Gunner, man, time is flying, man. It's already 1:42 over there where you are.
Yeah, baby. Yeah.
Oh man, how you feeling? How you feeling? Don't tap out on me now. How you feeling? I still got you.
Look, man.
Check your pulse. Check your pulse.
Look here, man. How many jobs do you have where you have fun doing what you do, man?
Oh man,
we can sit here and talk sports, yuck it up, and when you do it with good people, it makes it that much more enjoyable, And I've been blessed my whole career to do what I love to do. And everywhere I've worked, coast to coast, I've done it with just an abundance of good people on air, and it makes it that much more enjoyable, man. So, you know what? I'm having fun today, man. I'm sitting here, I'm having fun today.
Rob, we wish you were here.
I have fun every day with Rob. Rob and I, we've known each other 26 years, man. But I'm having fun. Today. I got you. We just had Big Sills. We're still rolling. We got more than an hour and 15 minutes to go. We still rolling.
Hey, listen, let's keep cooking, man, because I think the people are still hungry. You guys are locked in on Sports Take. He's Derek Gunn. I'm your guy, Tone. This show's the second filling in for our guy, Rob Ellis. Keep it locked, you guys. We got some more topics to cover. Let's do it.